a phone call one day. It was just like, hey, there's a couple guys in building 8 or whatever it was, and they're just throwing furniture off of the 3rd floor. Like, yeah. just wanted you to know. And
whether you're developing a new student housing community or acquiring an existing one, fast and reliable internet isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. But when it comes to serving college students, standard telco providers often fall short on both performance and support. Don't risk a frustrating experience for you and your residents. Choose Campus Technologies, a provider with nearly 25 years of expertise in delivering top-tier internet infrastructure and exceptional customer service for student housing nationwide. Beyond high-speed wired and wireless internet, Campus Technologies also offers managed IT services to keep your property management team running smoothly at their properties. Even if you're not currently in the market for a provider, you need to know the best practices for upgrading your property's internet infrastructure. Download their latest white paper today. You can find the link in the show notes or visit campustechnologies.com. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring off-campus student housing to life. Got a very special guest today. I'll introduce him here in just a second, but want to go over a couple of things really quick. Just if this is your first time consuming any type of content from Student Housing Insight, we are really here to be a platform for the student housing professionals in the U.S. and Canada, as well as around the world. But we put a lot of concentration on U.S. and Canada, and we've got a lot of things that we provide in order to make that connection for all those student housing professionals. Number one, the podcast, but we also have a webinar called Shop Talk that happens each month. SHOP stands for Student Housing Operations, and you can find out more about that at shoptalk.info. We've got a complete library of the past, 3 years of Shop Talk webinars. Again, we do that every single month. If you want more information or if you want to get a monthly invite to register for the webinar, you can do that again at shoptalk.info. Well, hey, for those of you that don't know, we also have our ambassadors, our Student Housing Insight ambassadors. These are a group of 12 individuals that really are kind of the lifeline between myself and everything else that's happening in the industry. They provide so much information with what's happening out in the field. And so that really keeps a lot of the content that I do relevant, because of that's where I've got my pulse on what's happening in the industry. But in addition to that, they're also part of this ambassador program, in order to get their name out there and to make more connections. And one of the things that I kind of set out for them at the beginning of the year, each year, is to create a piece of content. And we're doing that today, releasing something that actually 2 of our ambassadors came up with. I'll explain a little bit of the story, but I want to go ahead and introduce this ambassador. If you stay in touch with Student Housing Insight, especially through our webinars and stuff, you've certainly heard his name, and that is John Barr with the Dinerstein Companies. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to produce some fun and different, engaging content. Yeah, it's been awesome being a part of the ambassador program, being out here at these conferences, meeting new people. People are now coming up to me, asking me questions. It's really fun to be with this group as we're kind of also leaning on each other as trying to become, hopefully one day, the next leaders in our industry as we kind of pave the way of what this new wave of innovation is looking like for our industry.
So speaking of innovation, that's part of your title now. You're Director of Leasing and Innovation. What does that look like at Dinerstein?
Man,
just talk to me about like the past 6 months. What does innovation look like at Dinerstein?
So really, as most companies are, my title really kind of was a genesis of, I think there's a lot of new technology out there and it's all great. And so one thing that one of our leaders really looked at was like, if we're going to do this right, we need to put someone at the front of that. Well, I don't want to say engaging self, but I have a very curious mind, and I'm always like, oh, look at this. How can we tweak this? I was a big early adopter to AI and the centralization that was happening around that,
Yeah.
and all these products coming out. And so before the title, I kind of was already engaged in that. And one day Clay Hicks looked at me. He was like, you know what? You should do this full time. And so I was like, okay, sounds great. Change up my role from before that. And so the last 6 months, a lot of what I do is I spend a lot of time with our on-site teams. I still have a smaller portfolio. So it naturally gives me a nice little pilot group that I can always
Sure.
test things out on. And so I'm just going to sites and figuring out where, and hearing from our residents, hearing from our prospects, hearing from our managers. I think the most forgotten person is our maintenance supervisors, and really spending engaging time with them to figure out, okay, what in your day, if I could give them that magic wand, what could I help you out with today? And what could I streamline for you on the back end that would make your day easier? You can get back to the things that you actually enjoy doing. And so that's most of what I do. The other half of that is just sitting through hours on hours on hours of demos. So those tuning in, you've probably seen me on a demo if you're on the vendor side, you've probably seen me there because I'm very curious. So it takes up a lot of the time. And I didn't realize that at first. I think that's anyone stepping into an innovation role, just be prepared to block off calendar time for all of the demos that you do. Because there's just so many products out there and they're all great.
Well, and it's not just the demoing, but it's the questions that you have to get into, because whoever you have on that demo, they're also aware you've probably taken on 2 or 3 other demos on the same type of product with one of their competitors, and you've got to go through and really kind of weigh out, okay, where is this particular product or service, where is this going to impact me more versus their competitor? And it's a lot.
We're a developer on the conventional side as well. And so any product that I'm implementing on the student side, I need to make sure that there's some parallels with conventional, because my goal is to streamline it across all platforms. And so making sure I don't want to say a one size fits all, but the product can bend and mold to whatever product type that we're actually pushing that out to. So yes, it's a lot of checks and balances, talking to different people from the leadership standpoint to get their input on, if we implemented this, what does that look like from them? So project managing at its finest.
Well, hey, as a SHI ambassador, as I mentioned earlier, each SHI ambassador has to come up with some piece of content. You're now in your second year of being an ambassador, and this year we introduced something a little new, because the reason you're a second year, you were on it last year was with 12 other individuals. I asked 6 of you guys to stay on for another year as a mentor. Also asked you to stay on because I never got any content from you last year.
That's fair, but you got it.
Oh, I've got more than enough now. You paid me back with a lot of interest, to say the least. But this year you're paired up with Courtney Daisy is your mentee, and you're working with her on what her content could be. And for those that don't know Courtney, she's been an article student living for the past several years. Just made an announcement she's moving over to Core Spaces and a role over there. So super excited about that for her. But she kind of came up with this man on the street. Hey, let's go to the conferences. Let's talk people. Let's try to get people to, kind of open up a little bit on things that, maybe, frustrating for them, or really, I think you call it a spicy take, within student housing. And I was like, yeah, I really love that idea. And so we wanted to test this out at Interface. Now, you didn't do quite the man on the street type of interview that she's going to be doing, but we went with kind of the same theme, which is our student housing insight tough talk. So for those that can't get the acronym, it's shit talks, and I will get t-shirts printed up. Don't worry, they're coming.
I'm waiting for one.
But you took more of an interview style, a sit down interview style with 5 different folks at Interface, and what came out of it was really great insight. And so we're taking that, even though it wasn't in that man on the street, type of structure, I said, John, this is really great content, really great insight. Let's just launch this as an entire season. You and I will just, sit down and come up with the intros. So we're going through that today, and we'll launch these over this summer. And so I'm really excited for everybody to hear that this summer. Really quick, let's go down the list so everybody kind of knows what's coming out. First, that we're going to talk about today, talk about someone that's in innovation, is JT Bailey with RealPage. And JT joined RealPage, was it been 2 years now?
Yeah, so a little over 2 years now.
2.5, something like that. Yeah. And so a lot of really cool things he's doing over there. We'll talk about that, get into that interview here shortly. We've got actually his wife, Erin Bailey. Yes, there is nepotism within student housing. They actually met, I guess, when they were at Asset together. And then Erin is actually your colleague at Dinerstein.
He's my boss.
You said it.
He is my boss. That is who I report to. So I love her.
And I think, did you and JT go to college together or around the same time?
No, I met them through working at Dinerstein, and now they're like close family friends of mine. So like, I feel like I went to college with them. They let me go. I actually got to go to my first A&M game this year versus Texas, which was incredible. So yeah.
Now you're wearing an LSU polo today, but in student housing, that means absolutely nothing. Doesn't mean you're an alum. Doesn't mean
this means we're building a site in LSU, and so my goal is to have a polo from every site that I oversee with whatever market that means. I also have a Sam Houston State polo, which I rarely wear because I don't wear orange a lot.
Yeah, I've collected a lot of T-shirts over my time in student housing, and if someone wanted to come into my closet and try to figure out something about me, they would have no clue where my loyalty for college sports is at, because it's all over the place. And so completely get that. But so where did you go to school? As long as we've known each other, I don't think I've ever asked or looked on your LinkedIn profile.
Well, I'll tell you this much. It wasn't a Power 5. It was a D2 school in Ellensburg, Washington, called Central.
Yeah.
It's literally in the center of Washington State. It doesn't rain there a lot, like most people think. And so, I played football there I did my whole undergrad there, went to school to be a teacher, got this cool little CA job there, and would have never thought that this was the career path. But I graduated, did my student teaching during that time, and I had a job offer out of college to either go be a teacher or get some free housing. And I was like, I just got recently engaged, so the free housing sounds like a better career path for me at this point in time. So still, heart goes out to all my teachers out there. It's just I had to make a decision for my wife, who has she has expensive tastes, so I think I need those needs sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to my path. I was a history major and was going through my student teaching clinicals, and I was already in an assistant manager job by that point in time. And I was just like, I really do like teaching, and that's probably why my wife and I, we homeschool our kids. But it was one of those things where I was just like, I've got to document every time a kid sneezes in my class. Why would I want to go do this? And so, praises to the teachers out there for sure.
Like, what's funny, I think it's especially like these CAs that are in the industry, like you see them get to this point where they're like going through, I'm going to be this business executive, or I'm going to do this. And it's like, you get to the last little bit and you're really like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And so it's like, I guess I have to finish this degree, but I'm going to go down this different career path. My heart goes out to y'all as well too. And trust me, staying in this industry, there's plenty for you to do. And I think I feel like I get to teach the next generation on how to lease and how to be a leader in our industry. So I still get that fulfillment as needed.
So let's go through the rest of the series with everybody and give them a preview of who's coming up. Again, Mr. and Mrs. Bailey are the first two. After that, I believe we've got Nick with Up Campus.
Correct.
Incredible career he's had, not just here in the US, but he's also done student housing in Europe, which was, I think you get in a little bit with him on the interview as well. And then who do we have after that? You remember?
So after Nick, that goes into William Butler, Willie, as we all like to call him in the industry. Willie's a close friend of mine. He and I have a super long past. Willie is now at Empower. And so he and I go way back, and he and I both probably had a very similar path of starting as like wee little CAs working for Campus Crest, which if any of y'all have some industry knowledge, that's an old school one. So we started way back then. He was in Pullman, Washington, and I was in Ellensburg at the time.
It's funny hearing, I don't know how many years there are between you and I, but enough that when you say Campus Crest being old school, because old school for me was Allen O'Hara. But at Campus Crest, living in Charlotte and everything, and kind of knowing all the folks that were involved over there, it's so funny seeing how that organization, has found their footing in other companies within student housing. And it's anytime somebody brings it up, it feels very old school now. Yeah, and Willie is, if you're not new to the podcast, Willie he actually used to be a co-host with us as well, and wrote a book. Probably have it here. Let's see. Oh, he's going to kill me if I don't know. Here it is. Releasing. It's a book he came out with a couple years before he started, or he started it probably a couple years before he started Empower. But a fantastic book if you really want some perspective on leasing within the student housing industry, for sure. So, and then I think the last one that we've got is Jacob Kosher. Is that right?
Yes, Jacob Kosher at Elise AI. Jacob and I is very similar. We kind of go back. He actually was at Article, former CA Venture. He and I led one of my first lease ups that I ever done there. And then he actually came. He's been around the industry. He's worked for a lot of big companies. I think
he worked for Dinerstein for a minute. Didn't he?
Yes, he actually brought me over to Dinerstein. Then he went on to Be Home. Then he was working the centralization and AI efforts at Cardinal for a while. And after a while, I guess the man now is just trying to help build a startup over at Elise AI and doing an incredible job over there.
Yeah, I think they're beyond startup. They've got some great funding behind them now.
100%. But if you check them out on LinkedIn, they always say startup. So I just use it in normal talk. Now I'm like, oh yeah, they're a startup.
Yeah. It's hard to talk about AI not considering them a startup, but yeah, the amount of funding and just how much that product has evolved, they're definitely a staple now, for sure.
Agreed.
Well, hey, I want to get into this first interview with JT. What are some things that the audience needs to, you want to kind of clue them into, make sure that they pay attention to?
I think the biggest one is really listen in on the spicy take portion of JT's, but again, the rest of these leaders. I think each one of them, I selected them in hopes that I could get some feedback to. I think leaders always talk to leaders, but I would really want our on-site employees to listen to what our leaders are actually thinking and hearing it from different perspectives. What's funny though, and I didn't anticipate this going into this, was that it sounds like a lot of us are on the same page without even having these conversations previously. And I think our on-site teams they'll be happy to hear what our leaders are actually feeling and thinking and seeing through this new wave of AI and centralization. I think once the belief was, especially early AI was, it's like, oh, forget about the humans, let the robots do it. And I think you will be very pleasantly surprised as you're kind of tuning into those. I think the turn question that I ask, a fun fact, is like most of the time, us leaders, we all get together. One of the things we always bring up is, what's your favorite turn story? And we know that you as on-site teams are either currently going through that, or this may be your first, we're about to hit turn season. You're going to step into your first turn season. So just hearing through, and JT says something specifically in his that's like, embrace the pain, because like it'll be nostalgia later. Those turn moments, I think you'll look back, and I do it all the time now. You look back 5, 10, 12 years later, and you're like, those were some of the best times of my entire life. And the stories that you get from them and the creativity and innovation that you create just from how are we going to get these sofas off a 3-story building. Tune in. That's a little Easter egg for you. I think you'll just enjoy that piece because again, it's we empathize with the pain that y'all are going through, but also we want y'all to enjoy some of it because again, it's those memories that really build the team together, but then it's why people stay sticky to our industry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, hey, with that being said, I don't think we'll provide, actually, there will be an outro, a couple of things that need to let folks be aware of. So stay tuned for that. But let's go ahead and get to the interview with JT Bailey.
Hey everyone, this is John Barr and welcome to the first Student Housing Insight Tough Talks. I'm your host today, John Barr. We're currently at Interface and I'm excited to show y'all my guest, JT Bailey, a good friend of mine. JT, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you and thank you for being our first guest on this quick little webinar.
Truly honored.
This is the easy stuff. So JT, tell me, obviously we know you're at RealPage. Tell us about yourself, what you do at RealPage and what your title is.
Yeah, so I'm the VP and GM for the student market at RealPage.
Okay.
So my job in a nutshell is I look at everything we do at RealPage and the ways we drive value in conventional and affordable. And it's my job to work with all of our products, all of our teams, and make sure we offer that same value in the student market.
Okay. So break that down for someone on a site level. Like tell us, like, if you had to just kind of give it in a nutshell for someone that's working as a community manager, a CA on site, like what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so like a great example right now, I'm working really closely with the NOC CRM team.
Okay.
NOC is industry-leading CRM in the multifamily space. It's been around for a long time, the largest, most established one there is. I'm working really closely with that team on how we can make sure that same focus on the leasing experience, making sure your leasing team is equipped with everything they need, making sure you can communicate with your prospects, your leads, your applicants, your residents in the way that they want to be communicated with, making sure all of that works in the same way that we need it to in student at the same value level it does in conventional.
Okay, that's awesome. I can tell you right now, we need people like you working on things like that for us in student, because I know I've been on site plenty of times and I wish I had technology talking to one another, and I've been in all the spreadsheets and everything is in different holes. So I've been right there with you. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun. I grew up in this industry. I've been on site, been through all of the trials and tribulations that exist in student housing. And so it's really exciting and really fun for me to be able to take not just some of the experience I had, but the big picture pieces, go back to people now, learn what's the same, what's different, where's the industry moved, and then take that back and work with really smart, really talented people building cool products and helping deliver that student housing message so that we can really hit the mark.
That's awesome. So obviously you have a bunch of experience in the industry. What I would love to know, just kind of knowing what you know now, what is like one of the spiciest takes that you have currently on either the state of our industry or just where you're seeing operators go towards or anything like that? I would love to know.
I think a lot of people, when you talk about technology, it's all going to come back to kind of the buzzword of the day, the week, the month, the year, however long this lasts. But everyone's talking AI. And I love AI. I think that it is doing incredible things. I think it's really adding a lot of value and benefit in areas, not just across our industry, but really across all industries.
Absolutely.
Hot take. I think that it's very easy to go a little too far with it. I think that AI as a tool is something that can really augment and enhance your leasing teams to really help them do their job better and to make them more effective and more efficient and to help fill the gaps where there might be some. But I think it is very easy to go down a path where you start to see AI as something that's reducing their importance or taking that personal touch out of it.
Yeah.
Student housing really is an industry that is incredibly interpersonal throughout the industry, whether it's on-site talking with, your residents, your prospects, whether it's within companies, whether it's in situations like these where you and I get to talk. And I think that there is a risk with some of the ways that AI is being looked at that it could, really tamp down on that a little bit too much. So I'm excited to see ways that we can use AI to help augment those teams and make sure the leasing team and the actual person making those contacts, building that relationship, is still at the forefront of the process.
Well, you heard it first, y'all. JT's coming for my job, and I guess I'm not leading innovation anymore. No, I love your take on that, because as much as I'm deploying, as an operator, I'm deploying all of this technology and it's streamlining all these things. I look at the stats from the background. I'm like, oh, this is great. It's working. It's working. But in the same breath, if I go on site today, I can sometimes see the disconnect in that connection that was once so much more at the forefront than it is now, because COVID has kind of enabled us to kind of lean on technology more, where it's like now it's almost become a crutch versus something that's enhancing what we were already doing great. So I love that take on that, and I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I just think that as long as we keep the teams actually doing the work, the guys on the front line who are really building those relationships, as long as we keep them at the forefront of our plans, and we look at things like AI to augment that staff as opposed to replace them or deprioritize them, then AI can be and will continue to be an incredibly valuable tool for everybody. I just think that, I'd hate to find us in a position where we've solved a short-term problem by automating certain things, but down the road created a long-term problem where we don't have the next generation ready to step up the way that previous generations did, and that we don't have people that have learned the hard lessons and gone through it the way that so many of this industry have, that they can bring to that next level of leadership.
Yeah, we'll bring in the choir because JT is preaching right now. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. So I think one of the best stories that I think us at the corporate level and above and vendor level, we really get to, at these conferences like Interface, we get to kind of intermingle. And one of the questions that always is asked, but I don't think site teams really ever hear this question. They may ask each other, but like they don't know what we've been through. So I'm going to ask you, I would love to know like what's your most like memorable or like crazy story from either turn or even in the industry.
Yeah, let me first of all say, turn in the moment isn't always the most fun.
100%.
But man, you get far enough away from it and you look back and realize like you had some good times.
100%.
And appreciate the suck while you're dealing with it, because it's you'll miss it one day. But I love turn. It was always a great time to experience some different versions of property management. Plenty of stories, a majority that probably shouldn't repeat on camera, but one that always stands out to me that I always enjoyed, sitting at a property where I was the leasing manager. We were still leasing, and so I was still in the office and dealing with some of the leasing side of things, dealing with some of the residents who were still coming in while turn was occurring. I got a phone call one day. It was just like, hey, there's a couple guys in building 8 or whatever it was, and they're just throwing furniture off of the 3rd floor. Like, just wanted you to know. And we were like, oh yeah, no, we'll definitely, we'll come out there and see what's going on. Well, I knew exactly who it was, and they were just getting rid of furniture. And I was like, whatever, it's turn. You got to do what you got to do. Like, there's a lot of work to be done. If you're gonna skip a few steps and save some energy and blow off some steam in the process, I'm not gonna get too mad.
Well, I think now I'm going to challenge some of my teams. Like if the space, well, I have a lot of high rises and mid rises, but maybe off of some of those balconies, if the property's a little vacant, maybe we start looking to throw in some furniture off the balconies to like blow off some steam.
Yeah, and I'll also say this was a garden style property, so I'll look directly at the camera here. Throw furniture off the building safely if you're going to. Probably don't do it in general, but if you're going to, do it safely.
Yeah, we're going to need a disclaimer right below on all this. So yeah, this is going to be, this is what Student Housing Insights Tough Talks is all about. We're here to have a good time. I'll wrap us up with a few more questions. Okay. So I think a good question for industry leaders is, obviously you have so much experience. You've dealt with a lot of things throughout your career. And I think when you're younger, you don't know what you don't know. So I would love if you could go back in time and tell, younger JT, like one piece of advice, or if you could tell our audience one piece of advice that you would give them in this industry, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 directions to go with this. One is just, what I would tell myself, and another is just kind of advice for right now to people that are on site, younger people that are in these roles right now. Don't be afraid to explore what all there is in student housing. So often especially if you're on site, you interact mostly with your operations team or your leasing and marketing team, whether that is your property manager, your regional manager, and the operations chain, or maybe you have a marketing director or a leasing resource. You see that, and it can be really easy to think that those are the only paths for the future. But there's so much that goes on in the background in student housing. I got really into the technology side and the system side when I was on site. And I was one of the first people to always raise my hand and say, no, I want to test that. I want to play with that. Let me give me feedback. And that really opened a lot of doors for me. And that really opened a career path that at the time I didn't really know I was opening that door. Ted Lasso says it best, be curious, right? See what else is out there. Talk to people, pick people's brains, ask what else is going on. If there's something new that comes out on your property or a new product or something, ask who's running it, ask who's in charge of it, ask if you can talk to them and give them their feedback. Make yourself known, your opinions and your voice heard. And that kind of goes into the second, part of this. My advice is just that, make your thoughts heard, make your feedback heard from, I'm not on the operations side anymore. I'm obviously on the vendor side and on the technology side, but I feel like, from the operator side, you probably have a similar point of view on this.
Sure.
We've been there, we've done that, we've been close to the work. One of the things that makes student housing so much fun is it's always changing, which is great, except that means that it's not the same as it was for us 5, 10, whatever years ago. And so if you're on property, if you're doing the work, if you're in the weeds and really going through this and something just kind of sucks, or it doesn't, you think there should be a better way, or it feels like you're doing extra work, or it's inefficient or whatever else, speak up. Let your opinion be heard, because everybody in this industry wants their site teams to be successful. And finding ways to help take roadblocks out of the way, helping find ways to make things more effective and more efficient, correlates directly to that success.
100%.
So if you have an idea, speak up. And, if it doesn't go your way the first time, don't let that discourage you from it the second time. This is an industry that was built by people giving their feedback and saying there's a better way to do it. And the reason student housing is where it is because there were people that were not afraid to say, I think there's a better way. And the people they were saying it to were open to hearing, just because this is the way we do it doesn't mean it's the best way.
I loved your point really on that. We're in an industry that's always changing. I could think at where I'm currently at in my career that sometimes I always have the best answer for whatever that may be. And I think I have every solution, but often I'm so humbled by when I go to a site team and find out actually what's going on. And it's so impactful. And I think for our audience specifically, yes, speak up, talk to your regional, talk to your manager. If you're a manager, talk to other managers about it. And there's probably a solution out there for you. And if there's not, in similar cases like you and I, go and be the solution and find the solution that can help expedite processes and take work that is redundant, not fun, or not filling your basket on a day-to-day, because what really matters is giving more time back to the team so that they could be themselves in front of a tour or in front of a resident and give that resident the best resident experience. So I loved all of your takes on that.
100%. And I think I'm always open to hearing, right? I know even outside of maybe your direct chain of command, maybe there's a vendor you're working with, maybe there's somebody else, maybe there's communities like SHI where you're having a chance to interact with other people. Have those conversations, talk to people, and just say hey, this is a problem I'm having. How are you handling it? Or have you found a solution to it? Or whatever else. I can tell you from my standpoint, if somebody brings me a problem and I don't have a solution, my first response is, how would you want that solved? And then you go from there. In my role, I get to take that back to my teams. Other groups will do things similar but different. But that's the opportunity for us to really get that feedback and help find ways to keep driving the industry forward.
Exactly. It's all about pushing everything forward. That's why we come to these conferences. That's why we have these panels and we're creating content like this, is because we care about this industry and finding more people that care about this industry. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the very first Student Housing Insight Tough Talks. JT, thank you. I appreciate you joining me, brother. And
thank you, John. Always happy to talk to you and the SHI team.
Absolutely. Well, we'll always have you on. And now I guess we're off to some more interviews. This is the first one of many more.
I've really kind of grown close to JT since, starting Student Housing Insight, as well as my consulting company, Providential Student Housing. And it's so great having someone like him at a company like RealPage that really understands. He was an asset through, when they were really small and until they were, pretty much the size that they are now. Well, minus the focus on conventional, because they've just exploded on conventional. But student housing side, they were probably number two or so when he left. And what he's able to bring, the perspective he's able to bring into that position with RealPage, I think is such a huge asset for them. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with him, John, and get that perspective.
Yeah, and I knew going into this that JT specifically, he was like one of the first people that I asked. And I did it intentionally because I think sometimes when you think of innovation or you think of someone that does all the creating, you think of someone with glasses, with a keyboard, and just sits and like doesn't talk to anyone. And like JT is further from that person. He's so personable and he can understand what, again, you kind of heard it through his turn stories. You heard it through just I think his normal vernacular. He's a normal, down to earth guy, and having those conversations and having someone like that can interpret what's actually happening on student sites and what's happening or where the needs are, and then turning that into a place at RealPage that can produce products that actually fit those needs, I think is so quintessential for what we need for the student realm specifically, because they've always had it for conventional. But it's one stat that always sticks with me is like, of all the beds out there or all the units out there, I think student makes up like, it's like 2 or 3% of all. And so like we're so massive now, but we're still a niche. And so having someone like JT who can really float between the lines of having really high intellectual conversations at the corporate level, but then also being able to break it down with operators, on-site teams, et cetera, it was not a question. He was like the first person I was like, you got to be on here. And luckily he owed me a few. So it was an easy one to get on.
Well, the next episode, we're going to be talking with his wife, which that's, we'll see what her reaction is to that high intellectual comment or description. No, she thinks a lot of her husband.
The audience is going to have to judge who did it better. And I'll say this to help a man vote for Aaron, to just to help her. Everyone vote, say Aaron did better. And you message me on the side of actually who you think.
Well, let's give everybody just a quick sneak peek. Here is a clip from your interview with Aaron.
It's just so important to never burn a bridge. I think there's graceful ways to handle every situation, but there's really, just to always, I would like to, think that I never have before. Sure. But really just to always keep that in mind. You're always, how many times this week have we seen people that
just walk into this room?
Exactly. Just walk into this room. Like,
can't wait to hear that. That will be out in just another week or so. You should be getting this podcast should be dropping like the second week of June. I wanted to make folks aware of a couple of events that are coming up, 3 events specifically. One, if you're in Southern California or if you're in the Raleigh area or have properties in the Raleigh Chapel Hill area, we just launched a new partnership with BizNow where we're helping them with some things that they've launched a new student housing summit series. If you've ever gone to a BizNow event from a real estate perspective, it's typically very micro into a particular niche. It could be data centers, it could be BTR, it could be retail, whatever. And it's typically just a half day type of thing, very high networking. They've been doing a student housing one for years. That was kind of a national thing, but it was in Philadelphia. It was always in July. It was tough for student housing folks to get to, but there were a lot of higher ed P3 kind of folks that would gravitate towards it that were, kind of in that I-95 corridor between, call it Richmond and Boston. Right. And so earlier this year, they launched a couple of other summits. They did one in Austin for the Texas market. They've done one in Northern California. On June 18th, they're doing 2. one in Los Angeles for the one in Los Angeles for the Southern California market. So pretty much, San Diego State up to USC, call it. That is going to be June 18th. And then on that same day, the Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Durham market is also having theirs. It's in Raleigh. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but we'll put the graphic up on the screen, and we'll also put the links in the show notes. So don't feel like you got to look at your screen, or if you're listening to this just from an audio standpoint, you can always go to biznow.com and go to their events page and sort it for student housing, and whatever they've got will come up. They're going to have another one if you're in the Atlanta market. And I would say kind of everything from Athens to Valdosta. They're having one there on July 30th. Again, I don't know. That's the greatest date for an off-campus student housing conference. But again, there will be a lot of higher ed folks there. I think they've got somebody from Georgia Tech and GA that are going to be speaking. So if you're in that area and you're not full board on with Turn at that time, maybe that's something that would be great for you. But you could find all of those events at our event page at studenthousinginsight.com. And you just go to the events page and they're listed there on our calendar of events. So go check that out. And don't forget about Shop Talk. Shop Talk this month will be June 24th. And you can find out more information and register for that at shoptalk.info. John, thanks so much. Looking forward to the next one, and we'll talk soon.
Pleasure. See you soon, guys.